That moment of relief when suddenly everything makes sense. Hello, friends of Ai4Autism. In this episode, we're taking a look at the following article in the Irish Times website: Adulthood Autism Diagnoses. It's just nice to finally know why I was always on the outside of all the groups at school, where two women share their stories of learning. They have autism much later in life than most people do. Cleona Kelleher. This is an article by Arlene Harris. It's estimated that 1.5% of school-aged children in Ireland have autism, a disorder which is described as a complex lifelong development disability which typically appears during early childhood and can impact a person's social skills, communication, relationships and self-regulation. But while most people who have autism are diagnosed at an early age, some don't get diagnoses until they're well into adulthood. We've read about this before and we've heard about this so many times from the people we've interviewed. Moving on. This was the case for Cleona Kelleher, who has just recently found out that she has autism, having felt different for her entire life. I was just diagnosed in the past few months, she says. It came about after a Facebook friend, who had got diagnosed some years back, shared some information in relation to autism, which I found really interesting. I realised after reading the post that I related to a huge amount of it, and that began the process of me questioning myself. Then I joined TikTok and began to see lots of content about diversity, and again it all seemed incredibly specific to my own experiences, especially as all the changes that occurred due to the pandemic had the effect of making some particular characteristics of what I now know was my autism more challenging. So, earlier this year, I decided to pursue an official diagnosis, even though at that point I was almost completely certain that I was autistic. The 53-year-old says that as soon as she got her diagnosis, she was also encouraged to find out if she had ADHD, and discovering why she always felt so different to others had been very liberating. I went to the adult autism practice to get diagnosed and found them brilliant, although the process itself was quite tiring and brought up a lot of memories that were quite difficult, she says. After I got to my official diagnosis, I was also told that it would be worth pursuing a diagnosis of ADHD, as one of the screening tests showed that this was likely. The adult autism practice specialise only in autism diagnosis and don't do ADHD diagnosis, so I'll have to pursue that separately. Discovering that I'm autistic has been life-changing, but it will take time to unlearn a lot of the masking I had been doing, and while I may not outwardly seem to be autistic or struggling, the constant effort of masking eventually took a huge toll on me, and I ended up in what I believe to be an autistic burnout for the last year. So, I have been very open about my diagnosis, and I'm learning to manage my sensory issues better and try to minimize situations which cause me distress. I have also been learning to go with my own natural rhythms in terms of how I study. I'm currently completing a master's and learning into hyper-focus when it happens and not trying to do things in a linear way. The married mother of two grown-up daughters who lives in Kildare says feeling different has always been a constant in her life. And now that she understands why, she would encourage others who feel the same way to seek a diagnosis, or at very least celebrate the fact that they're different. I have often been bewildered by the fact that people can't see things the way that I do, but for most of my life I didn't understand that my brain literally works differently, she said. I tended to blame myself for my oddness or inability to fit into social situations that seem so comfortable for other people. We've heard this many times, haven't we? I also tried to organise my life and time in a way that wasn't suited to my own neurodivergence, and that actually made things quite difficult because I was working against my own natural brain patterns a lot of the time. For others who may feel that they're autistic or on the spectrum, I would say that a diagnosis has been very helpful for me. But a diagnosis may not always be possible because of the circumstances, so I think self-diagnosis is valid. Talking to others in the autistic community can really help with the feelings of isolation, and I would urge people to reach out and get the information they need and connect with others. And the article also shares the experience of Anne-Marie Gilson, another person who was diagnosed later in life, followed by a very lovely piece talking about what autism is and the different variations when it comes to individuals. So do check it out. We've heard this story before in many different forms, about people, especially women, who only later on in life discover that they're actually autistic, even though throughout their life they felt something was different. So what do you think? Thanks for watching. Do comment below, like, share, subscribe, and remember, love, life, and AI.